After 5 successful voyages, Sinbad the sailor was one of the wealthiest men in Baghdad. He lived in a sprawling mansion, resting on silk cushions and surrounded by more gold than most men see in a lifetime. But luxury has a way of becoming a routine. The soft cushions and daily feasts began to feel like a prison of comfort. Sinbad found himself yearning for the risk of a new deal and the thrill of the unknown, leading him once again to the port of Basra. That thrill turned into a nightmare when a storm pushed his ship into unmapped seas. The wind whirled the vessel around until it cracked open against a wall of jagged rocks, plunging the crew into the surf. Sinbad was among the few who survived the wreck. Battered and exhausted, he crawled onto the shore of a deserted island, surrounded by the splintered remains of his ship. As the survivors explored the island, they found a geological miracle. The stream beds weren't filled with silt, but with diamonds and pearls. Ambergris, floating gold from the sea, washed up on the beaches like common driftwood. This was a merchant's ultimate fantasy, yet the environment was hollow. For all that glittering wealth under their feet, there wasn't a single fruit tree, edible root, or animal to be found. The other merchants ignored the hunger gnawing at their stomachs. They scrambled across the rocks, frantically filling their pockets and bags with as many gems as they could carry. Days passed, and the biological reality of the island set in. Without food, the survivors began to waste away. They grew skeletal and weak, even as their piles of treasure grew taller. One by one, the merchants died in the sand, clutching fortunes that could have bought cities, but couldn't buy a single piece of bread. Sinbad looked at the diamonds his companions had died for, and then at the empty, barren landscape. He saw that a handful of pearls was no more useful than a handful of gravel if there was no one to trade with and nothing to eat. He decided to walk away from the hoarding. While his companions had focused on the ground, Sinbad turned his attention to the island's river, seeking a path that led away from the glittering graveyard. Using the last of his strength, Sinbad gathered logs from the wreckage and the shore. He lashed them together with cord to build a crude, heavy raft. He loaded the raft with a few select bags of jewels and the meager, bitter herbs he had managed to scavenge, the only supplies he had for a journey with no known destination. He pushed off into the current, leaving the silence of the island behind and surrendering himself to the movement of the river. Instead of the sea, the river flowed directly into a solid rock wall, disappearing into a narrow, lightless tunnel. Inside, the ceiling pressed down, forcing Sinbad to lie flat as the current swept his raft deeper into the heart of the mountain. In the pitch black, Sinbad had no control. He had traded the physical security of the shore for a blind plunge into the abyss, betting his life that the river had an exit. After hours of darkness, the raft suddenly burst into the light. The river opened into a sun-drenched valley filled with crops and swaying trees. Local farmers spotted the exhausted sailor and pulled his raft to the bank. They provided him with food and water before bringing him to the capital to meet their ruler, the King of Sri Lanka. When he stood before the king, Sinbad didn't try to hide or hoard the jewels he had brought from the tunnel. Instead, he presented them as a gift to the crown, offering the island's treasures as a gesture of respect. The king was moved by the gesture and treated Sinbad as an honored guest, eventually providing him with a ship, a capable crew, and a collection of royal gifts to carry back to his own caliph. Sinbad returned to Baghdad with a fortune greater than the one he had lost. The same gems that were worthless on a deserted beach had become his means of survival, his diplomatic currency, and his eventual